I walked out of work and froze. My spot was completely empty. No broken glass, no tow sign, nothing. Just a dead patch of asphalt where my 2023 Camry should have been. The same Camry I'd spent 6 years saving for. My chest tightened, my hands shaking as I checked the rows again, whispering, no, 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 no. But the space stayed empty. My first new car, finally paid off, was gone. And when I called my parents desperate for help, the answer I got didn't just punch the air out of my lungs, it made me realize this wasn't a theft. It was something far worse. I grew up believing that being the strong one was some kind of blessing. People said it like a compliment, like it meant I was reliable, grounded, impressive in ways other daughters weren't. What they never mentioned was the cost. Being the strong one meant you were the one they could take from again and again because you wouldn't break loudly enough to inconvenience anyone. My name is Graina Reyes. I'm 30, a software engineer in Denver, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the quiet spaces between responsibility and invisibility. On the outside, people see composure, clean blouse, soft makeup, steady voice. Inside, I've spent years swallowing things, whole hurt, disappointment, anger, until they sat like stones in my stomach. My family always said Elena needed more than I did. She was the spirited one, the delicate one, the one who felt too deeply. I used to watch my parents hover around her like she was a candle in the wind, shielding her from any breeze, no matter how small, while assuming I'd stand firm through any storm. When we were teenagers, the differences were already clear. I worked part-time after school, wiped tables, counted coins, saved for months to buy a used laptop with a wheezing fan. The next morning, I watched my mother place a brand new MacBook on Elena's bed. She needs it for a project, she told me. I nodded, pretending I didn't feel the ground shift. At 18, Elena borrowed my bike just for an hour. It came back 2 days later, lying in the rain behind a friend's house chain, rusted seat torn. "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "You can fix it." She didn't mean any harm. But I learned something that day in my family. Intention mattered more than impact, at least when it came to Elena. Through college, I balanced 2 jobs, long nights in the library, cheap instant coffee, and the constant pressure to be self-sufficient. When my savings mysteriously went missing, I found out weeks later they'd been used to cover one of Elena's classes after she missed a deadline. My mother brushed it off with a smile. Family helps family. By the time I graduated and moved to Denver, I had stopped expecting fairness. Independence felt safer than hope. I built my life quietly, paid bills on time, fixed my own problems, didn't ask for anything. And after 6 long years, I finally bought something that felt like mine. My first new car, a silver 2023 Camry. Clean, reliable, earned. Every payment I made felt like a small victory. My parents congratulated me, but I saw the look. That faint wince, like my success was an inconvenience, like it created an imbalance. Elena had totaled 3 cars in 5 years, each one replaced without question. But my car was different. It carried every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of pride I'd built on my own, which is why the empty parking spot didn't feel like a theft at first. It felt like a pattern I had spent my whole life trying to outrun. The moment I saw the empty spot, I did what any rational person would do. I tried to explain it away. Maybe I parked on another level. Maybe someone towed it by mistake. Maybe I was exhausted and misremembered entirely. But as I walked the lot for the 4th time, a cold, shaky clarity settled in my chest. My car wasn't misplaced. It was gone. My breathing turned shallow. I pulled out my phone thumb, slipping against the screen, and called the first people I thought would ground me, my parents. I called my parents panicking. My mother picked up on the second ring, cheerful like she'd been expecting good news. "Mom," I gasped, "my car is gone." "Did someone tow it? Do you know what I should—" "Oh, honey, relax. We gave it to Elena. She needs it more." Just like that. Soft voice, casual tone, as if she were telling me she'd borrowed a sweater, not stolen a $30,000 vehicle I'd spent 6 years earning. What? My voice cracked. You gave it to her. She has that new job, my mother said. She can't be taking the bus. You'll manage for a few days. Don't make this bigger than it is. I stood frozen in the parking lot. The sounds around me muffled the distant hum of traffic, the whir of a streetlight, my heart pounding in my ears. My father's voice cut in as if he had been listening the whole time. "It's still in the family. You're overreacting. We all share. Remember when we helped you in college, you used my savings to pay for Elena's class," I whispered. That wasn't helping me. Silence. Then my mother sighed, disappointed. "Don't start that again. Your sister is trying. She's had a rough time. Rough time. The same rough time she'd been having for 10 years. Images hit me hard. Elena crying after totaling her first car, my parents hugging her, telling her it was bad luck. Elena smashing the second one while texting the front end folded like paper, my father saying she's shaken. Don't scold her. Elena partying too hard, totaling the third, my mother murmuring, "She needs support, not judgment." 3 cars, gone in 5 years. And now mine, my first new car. My small miracle had been handed to her like a spare pair of shoes. "Mom," I said slowly, "I didn't give anyone permission. You took my key. You took my car. We borrowed it," she insisted. "Stop being selfish." Selfish. The word cut deep, familiar like an old bruise. I felt something inside me bend, then snap. All those years of swallowing things, of fixing what wasn't mine to fix, of pretending their choices didn't hurt me. Every ignored boundary. Every time they said I was strong enough to handle it, but I wasn't strong in that moment. I was shaking with a rage so quiet it almost felt cold. "Give Elena a few days," my father said. "She'll bring it back." "No," I said. "She won't." My mother's voice sharpened. "Don't do anything stupid, Grain." But they'd already used the one word that always revealed their truth: family. Family was the shield they hid behind. Family was the excuse for every violation. Family was the leash they counted on me never cutting. For the first time, I saw it clearly. I wasn't the strong one. I was the one they expected would never fight back. Not anymore. I pulled the phone from my ear. My mother's voice was still coming through, scolding, urgent, but I didn't listen. I hung up, I whispered to myself, and dialed 911. Officer Ruiz arrived 20 minutes later, the evening sun sinking behind the Denver buildings, leaving everything washed in orange. When she stepped out of her patrol car, her presence alone made the ground feel steadier. I handed her every document I had: registration, insurance, payments, my fingers still trembling. "All under your name?" she asked. "Yes." "Completely mine." She nodded, expression tightening just slightly. "And no one had permission to take it." No one. Hearing myself say it aloud, clearly, firmly, felt like stepping onto new ground. Ruiz photographed the empty spot, glanced at the security camera overhead, and radioed in a bolo. When she said Elena's name into that radio, my sister's name, it punched the air out of my lungs. "Family theft cases are still theft," she added. "The law doesn't make exceptions for feelings." Her words hit harder than the missing car. My entire life had been built around exceptions, me shrinking so Elena could expand me, absorbing, so she could avoid consequences. Now, for the first time, someone drew a line where my family never had. When Ruiz left, the parking lot felt too big and too quiet. I sat on the curb, staring at the empty asphalt. This should have felt like victory, like reclaiming something. Instead, guilt tangled around my ribs. My parents' voices replayed in my mind, selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. The words I'd been branded with since childhood. Walking back to my building, I felt hollow. My apartment, usually my sanctuary, felt foreign. I made tea, but it tasted metallic. I sat on the couch in the dark, the city lights flickering against the windows, and let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. Reporting your own family isn't a clean decision. It scrapes at every old loyalty, every inherited script. But when I thought of Elena behind my wheel, laughing, posting, maybe telling people it was hers, my stomach twisted. She hadn't called. Not once. Not even to ask if I was okay. Neither had my parents. That silence said everything. Later, my phone lit up, unknown numbers, relatives, all echoing the same message: drop the report. Don't ruin the family, be understanding. Not a single call asking if I had a way home. For the first time, I didn't answer. It wasn't strength. It was exhaustion. And somewhere in that exhaustion, something new took shape resolve. They had crossed a line, and this time I wasn't going to erase it. 3 days after I filed the report, the call came while I was at my desk. I'd barely slept, barely eaten, living in that suspended place between fear and stubbornness. When my phone buzzed with Officer Ruiz's name, my breath caught. "We located your vehicle," she said. "Your sister was stopped for speeding near Aurora. The car's been impounded." Impounded! The word hit like a wave relief, anger, dread, all tangled together. "And Elena?" I asked quietly. "She's fine. She's being questioned now." Fine. Of course she was fine. My hands trembled as I thanked her. The moment I hung up, the guilt surged again, thick, suffocating. Elena in a police station, my parents panicking, my relatives sharpening their phones to call me the villain again. But underneath the guilt, something colder pulsed, a sense of justice I hadn't felt in years. That evening, I drove a rental to the impound lot. The warehouse sat behind a chain-link fence, bright floodlights slicing through the dusk. A clerk handed me forms without looking up. Camry Silver Space 34. The concrete echoed under my steps as I followed the numbers, heart pounding harder with each row I passed. And then I saw it. My car. But not the car I left in the parking lot days earlier. Fast food wrappers everywhere. Makeup smeared on the passenger door. An energy drink spilled across the console. Mud on the mats. The gas tank nearly empty. My emergency blanket crumpled in the back seat like trash. It felt like someone had taken a memory I cherished and dragged it through the dirt. "She only had it for 8 hours," I whispered. A voice behind me said. I turned. It was Officer Ruiz. I swallowed hard. "Elena, my sister." Ruiz studied the state of the interior, exhaled long. This kind of carelessness, not unusual. People treat what they don't earn differently. Her tone wasn't judgmental, just honest, brutally honest. I braced my hands on the doorframe, breathing deeply. The anger that had simmered for years bloomed into something sharp and clear. Everything made sense now: the bike in the mud at 18, the savings taken for her class, the laptop handed to her like she was royalty. They had taught Elena something dangerous, that consequences were optional. But not this time. After the paperwork was done, Ruiz handed me the keys and paused before turning away. "Whatever happens next," she said quietly, "remember, accountability isn't cruelty." That line followed me all the way home. A week later, I found myself sitting in a hard wooden chair outside courtroom 4B. The air smelled like disinfectant, old paper, and nerves. My parents sat across the hall, whispering sharply in Spanish. Elena sat between them, staring at the floor, her leg bouncing. She wouldn't look at me. When the clerk called the case, we filed inside. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes, and a voice like stone, read through the paperwork before looking at Elena. "Miss Reyes," she said, "I understand you wish to enter a plea today?" Elena nodded, voice barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor. Please read your written statement aloud." I didn't blink. I wanted to hear every word. Elena unfolded the paper with shaking hands. Elena Reyes. Admit that I took my sister's vehicle without permission. I knew the car was not mine. I took it anyway because I assumed she would forgive me. What I did was wrong. I'm sorry. For the first time in a long time, Elena sounded like an adult, not a child cushioned by excuses. The judge nodded. "Let the record reflect a guilty plea." I felt my pulse in my throat. Given the circumstances, this court sentences the defendant to 6 months of probation, a 1-year license suspension, and restitution to the victim for impound fees. The gavel hit wood. My parents gasped audibly. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father tensed, like someone had punched him. But what stunned me most wasn't their reaction. It was how quickly they moved to Elena, wrapping her in comfort, shielding her from consequences, even as consequences finally arrived. They didn't look at me. Not once. As the courtroom emptied, I stood still, letting them pass. Elena walked by inches from me, her face red, her eyes swollen. She hesitated as if to speak, but my mother's hand on her arm tugged her forward. "Not now," my mother whispered. Don't let her make this worse. Her. Like I was the threat. Like I was the problem. When the door closed behind them, something inside me settled, heavy but steady. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trembling. I felt anchored, like the part of me that had spent decades apologizing for existing had finally taken its last breath. Outside, the Denver sky hung low and gray. I walked to my car, the same car that had been violated, trashed, stolen. I sat inside and ran my fingers along the steering wheel. Mine. It hadn't felt like mine for a long time. Not just the car, my life, my boundaries, my voice. But in that moment, sitting in the aftershock of everything, something shifted. My parents had walked away from me, but I had walked back to myself. I drove home slowly, letting the silence wrap around me. Every mile felt like distance between the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. When I reached my apartment, the air felt different, like stepping into a room I'd just finished cleaning. I placed the courtroom papers on the counter, made myself tea, and sat by the window. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't grieving. I was reclaiming. And somewhere deep in my chest, a small voice whispered a truth I had never allowed myself to say. This wasn't the destruction of a family. It was the beginning of my freedom. In the weeks that followed, the noise around the case slowly faded. The calls from relatives stopped. The guilt quieted. And for the first time, my life didn't feel like a battlefield I had to hold together with both hands. I moved to a new apartment on the west side of Denver, closer to the foothills where the air felt lighter. I changed my number, kept only the contacts who treated me with respect. My days settled into a rhythm. Quiet mornings, long walks, evenings where I finally listened to the kind of silence that didn't demand anything from me. Every Thursday, I joined a small support group at a community center. Boundaries and healing. People who carried scars that looked a lot like mine. The first time I spoke, my voice shook, but the room didn't shrink from my story. They nodded. They understood. And little by little, I felt something inside me loosen. I had my car back, but more importantly, I had myself back. One afternoon, sitting in the driver's seat overlooking the mountains, I realized something simple and freeing justice hadn't ruined my family. It had restored me. A year later, an envelope showed up in my mailbox, plain, unmarked, but written in handwriting I recognized instantly. Elena. Inside was a short letter. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't blame anyone. She simply wrote that she was in therapy now, learning what responsibility really means, learning how to live without taking from others to stay afloat. And she ended with, "I know I hurt you. I'm trying to be better." I folded the letter once, slipped it into a drawer, and felt no rush to reply. Some stories don't need a reunion to have closure. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough. As I locked my car that evening, the steering wheel club catching a stripe of orange sunset, a quiet truth settled in me. What's mine stays mine, not because I guard it with fear, but because I finally learned to protect the person behind the boundaries. If this story touched something in you, tell me where you're watching from. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever stood your ground the way I did, hit subscribe. There are more stories coming, and you're not alone.